honestly just want to get with my friends and talk about them, their stories, their lives, their challenges, and how they overcame them. I just want to get to know them on a deeper level, and of course we're gonna laugh. I mean, that's what we do. But I want them to feel that someone listened. And that's it. This is the Barr Friends Podcast, where it's my space, your story, 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 your story. I am Christian Barr, and this is the Barr Friends Podcast. Joining me on the pod tonight is my former manager, friend, and just a kind-hearted soul. I am so elated that we get to sit down and have a candid conversation. Welcome for the first time on the Barr Friends Podcast. My near and dear friend, Diana, how are you?
Thank you for that introduction. That was very sweet, more than I could ever hope for. So thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. I am doing well. It's a bit chilly out, but
yes,
we're having a cozy, warm chat, so that'll be better.
for sure.
Yeah.
I must say though, like the weather hasn't been as cold like these last couple of days. It's been nice, so I'm thinking that spring is coming soon, hopefully. Mm-hmm. So for sure. I wanted to start by asking you a for starters question. What are you grateful for in this season?
That's a great question. Super great. Honestly, it's been kind of hard for me to come up with answers to that question because I feel like I should be more grateful for my day-to-day, which I'm not, but hopefully I can change that this year.
Okay.
But I'd have to say first and foremost I'm grateful for would be my community / friend group. I moved up here almost about 2 years ago with no friends or family nearby.
Crazy.
It was mostly just to be, halfway between me and my boyfriend's parents. So I'm grateful to be up here in upstate New York. But in that short amount of time, I really have met so many wonderful people, including you as well, of course. And they, have welcomed me with open arms into their community and their friend group. And it's just so genuine and so supportive and just the friendliest people I've ever met in my entire life. So I'm eternally grateful. I'd also have to say, I mentioned my boyfriend, so I have to mention my boyfriend, Jake. I'm super grateful for as well. We've been together for almost 11 years now, and he's literally been my rock. So I'm grateful to have him in my life. And I feel like not many people think about this, but I am super grateful for my home because I was like a digital nomad for a year, and I've been on trips and traveled. So I've been sort of moving a few times over the last few years, which I hope not to do anymore. So I think my home I'm super grateful for that I have now being up here because it's just so warm and it's so cozy and it's my space. I don't have to share it with anyone. I don't have to be on anyone's timeline or conform to anyone's ideals and things like that. So I'm very grateful for my home where I can just be me and sort of rest and relax and have all my things and such like that. So that's what I'm grateful for this season.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You are very big on community. And so I want to ask you, how do you check in on your friends? Do you send them text messages? Do you go and visit them? What is your constant go-to when it comes to just checking in on your friends?
That's a really great question. I feel like people, especially me, I would say, love my friends, but maybe sometimes I'm not a good friend of like always checking in and things like that. But honestly, what I've been doing for the past few years, I would say, is like the moment that I'm thinking about them, I would immediately reach out to them, because it's really not that, doesn't take that much time. It's not that difficult, and throughout my day. And I think that's helpful to me to feel better about wanting to be a good friend to my friends, because, I love them so much, and they've really been there for me throughout my life. They're my lifeline. So I think the moment that you're thinking about them, immediately shoot them a message or give them a call. I'm not one for calling. I'm better as a texter.
Okay.
I'm pretty awkward on the phone. But I actually have like a monthly call with one of my friends who I used to work with a few years ago, but we became friends through work. So, but we have like, she understands, like, we're adults, we're busy.
Right.
But she's always like, hey, you want to schedule our like monthly chat and just to catch up on all of our lives and what's been happening. And that I'm super grateful for, because she understands. And in that monthly call, super important. Also, the friends that you've made, if you have any similar interests, it's like if you want to go shopping or you want to try this new restaurant, invite your friends.
Right.
It's not that hard,
Right.
I'm for one that it's sort of tough for me to be alone sometimes. So, but like, I can, if I have like errands to do, I can go out and do things by myself. But I'd love to go with somebody. So if I'm thinking about trying some new coffee shop, or just want to try a new place to go shopping, or even a new town, just invite your friends. Maybe someone you haven't hung out with in a long time or spoken to. I think little things like that, that's how I check in with my friends. So
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because in this year for 2025, like, I really want to be, like, one of my goals is to be like a better friend, and just to be able to send a text message. And like I feel like we're in a generation where we don't really even call anybody anymore,
Yeah.
I mean, some people you do, or FaceTime or whatever, but it's really just a quick text, hey, how are you? But I always used to use an example of, I'm just too busy. But I find myself doing other things in the midst of me being busy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm like, but my friends, if I call my friends, they will stop or drop whatever it is to be able to,
to lock in and focus and speak to you.
Exactly.
That's really great. It's really important.
And so why can't I do that with them? And so I definitely want to be a better friend in that regard, and just to, lock in, text, maybe even call, and just to see, what's going on with them. Because I think that sometimes we can be so invested in our lives and what we got going on with ourselves that we don't really even take a moment or a second just to be like, wait, let me just make sure that everybody in my circle is good.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned FaceTime, and I forget that that's a thing, because I've been, through and through, I've been a Samsung user.
Oh my gosh.
But like, people who have iPhones can FaceTime other
Right.
people who have iPhones, and like I've seen like videos and people doing that with their friends, and I felt like if I had an iPhone, like that would be such a lifeline for me. But I don't have that tool, so it's funny. Yeah, I don't even think about FaceTime, but I feel like if I did have that for a Samsung phone, I'm sure maybe Samsung phone does have that capability, but that would be so much more useful to me, because you could just put them on in the background while you guys are just doing laundry and just chat,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Important.
Yeah, it's so important. Now, I gotta put you on the spot with something.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Why do you? Why are you a Samsung user?
Wow. What a question. I thought it was like a big loaded question.
Not yet.
I would say I'm a Samsung user. I just find it more user friendly for me.
Okay.
But also, I don't need a lot of the fanciness that comes with phones nowadays. I really just
Okay.
need maybe a Google search bar, like my email, my text messages, and phone. But I've just heard from past iPhone users around me that, you know, updates screw up their whole phone. They lose a lot of their data, or like, you know, their battery lifeline dies super quickly when they use it. So I don't know. I just always had an iPhone. I'm sorry. I've always had a Samsung.
I was like, oh.
Now I got iPhones on the way. But yeah, that's why I'm a Samsung user.
Okay, I'm with that. That's what's up. Hey, no, I ain't. I just wanted just to figure out, you know,
That's fine.
you know, why you choose Samsung. But all right,
Okay, iPhone user.
Okay, so friend,
Yeah.
I got you on this pod because while you were my manager, you know, we really couldn't really just sit down and have a one-on-one conversation like we are now to really get to know Diana as a person. And so I really wanted to invite you on this podcast to get to know you as a whole person. You know, not just a person that I work with or I used to work with, but just to know the Diana as a friend. And so one segment that I have on my pod is called The Genesis, and the Genesis means the beginning. And so I definitely would like for you to take us on a journey, take us on a ride through your life and just share with us your Genesis, your story. And yeah, I know a little bit about it, but I definitely want to know the movie.
And who would play me? No, that's a great question. That was the big spotlight question I thought you were gonna ask me earlier. So I was born on a dark and stormy night, obviously.
Hey.
I'm just joking with you. I would say probably, I honestly don't remember much of my childhood.
Wow.
I'm sure people have better memory than I do. I'm 30 years old now.
Okay.
And I would say, honestly, what sticks out in my story would be probably my 20s.
Okay.
My 20s were very dramatic.
Man.
Such a tragedy. No.
Yes.
No, my 20s were probably so important to me because I've definitely learned a lot in my 20s. I was shy in school growing up. I didn't really come into myself probably till end of sophomore year of college. I went to a state school in New York. I studied English and communications, and I had a minor in professional writing and event planning. I completed that in 4 years. I'm not an overachiever. I promise you. And from that, I really came into wanting to be an event planner or a wedding planner.
Okay.
It's the career I sought out for myself. I actually went into school as an English major because I was great at math, but I didn't really want to do that career field, and I was terrible at science, believe it or not. So that was out as a career choice. But I love to read, so I was like, but I didn't want to be a teacher.
Right.
But, you know, I had to choose something. I actually wanted to be a writer growing up.
What?
So that's why I went into English. But obviously you're like, how did that come about, wanting to be a wedding planner? Right. I went into English, but a lot of the courses, and because I was taking event planning as a minor in college, I just took a lot of classes, and I was involved in a lot of clubs that made me be able to like talk to people, be able to like come out of my shell and sort of, you know, take leadership roles and things like that. I was somehow like an event coordinator for a lot of the clubs I was involved in, and I just loved it. Like full-hearted, I just loved it. Like the thrill of like planning and collaborating with people and the teamwork and like people just seeing an event come together, you know, was just fantastic. And then like at the end, you're all like, that was so great. Mostly like I wanted to become like through that I wanted to do weddings specifically because I really just wanted to be a part of people's lives, people's memories. I think that's also, you know, tying to writing. It's because I wanted, not to say like I'm all high and mighty, but I sort of wanted to leave like an impact on people's lives. Whether that be so minuscule like, you know, hosting their wedding or writing something. So I think that's like the basis of me. And then, you know, after graduating, you know, I had to come into the real world and find a job and things like that. But when I was still in school, growing up, I had an older brother. He unfortunately passed away in 2014, and I was still in college at the time. And just putting it out there, trigger warning, he passed away by suicide. And that was very difficult to go through as a young adult. Trying to find who I am, trying to find my place in society. And you know how people say, you know, your 20s is where you really come into yourself. You really find yourself and your career path and your passions and things like that. So while navigating that in my life, that tragedy happened. And while most of it was much of a tragedy, it sort of added to my story of who I am and how I'm here today. And then a few years after that, my parents divorced in 2018. I'd had graduated college by then, and, you know, I just landed my first girl job, working in New York City. And that was a difficult time because I was trying to be an adult and while dealing with my parents' divorce alone because my brother had passed away at that time. And that was also a really difficult time. But then again, that added to my story. And bypassing that, then I'm here with you now today, talking to you. And I'm just trying to live the best life I can, because that's all you can do. Yeah, there's a lot to handle, I'm sure.
There's so much to unpack in that story. Like, wow. What were your thoughts when you came to find out that your brother committed suicide? Like, what was like the thought that just instantly came into your mind when you heard the news, or your feelings?
So it was interesting because when I was away at the time at college when my parents called me, and they were like, "Have you heard from your brother?" And I said, "No, I haven't. I just, shoot him a text a few days ago. He asked me how I was doing, and I just replied to that message." And they were like, "Oh, we don't want to alarm you, just to let you know, your brother might be missing." And it sort of didn't feel real when they told me that. And they were like, "Yeah, your brother's workplace called saying that he didn't show up for work, but my mom had dropped off my brother at the bus stop to go to work into the city. He commuted from home. And they said that, we went to the police, but we can't file a missing persons report until, 24 hours later." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But they were like, "If you hear from him, just let us know." And I said, "Okay." Initially, I sort of felt like an adrenaline rush when I first heard that, but also it didn't feel real, just because I was away at the time and I wasn't with them. So I guess in that case, I just sort of like just went about my day. It was just like a small piece of information, and my adrenaline, went away, and I sort of just went about my day. I'm like, okay, and I just thought, it's fine. He probably, I don't know what happened to him, but I didn't think anything terrible had happened. And then a week had passed, where the police informed my family that they had found a body. I won't get into specific details about how it went, but they just said they found a body, and they just needed my family to come in and identify, But my dad had got that call, and I was with him at the time, and we were going out to Queens at the time from home, so we just turned right back around and went to the police station. And my dad, so this happened around December time, so it's around like Christmas time, man. I would say a few days before Christmas. Yeah, it's a bit rough. And my dad identified and discovered that it was my brother. So, but my dad, interestingly enough, he said, let's not tell your mother just yet. So I sort of lived with that difficult news for about a week, just by myself, just me and my dad. My dad sort of wanted to build up this situation to notify my mother because, surprisingly enough, I actually grew up in the church. So we actually, planned to go to church celebration. There was programs and activities, and, it was potluck dinner. And that was about a week away. And so my dad sort of wanted to inform my mother, having her being surrounded by our friends, our family friends. So I couldn't handle that. So my dad actually had to lie to my mother, and my aunt and uncle met us at the police station where my dad had to identify the body. And so I immediately just stayed at my cousin's house for a few days because I couldn't face my mother, since I was just dealing with that information by myself. But to cut my answer shorter to answer your question, it was such, I couldn't tell you any specific words or emotions, but I'll try. But it was honestly like I was living like some crazy TV show. You could probably say it's like the Truman Show movie, I guess, where Jim Carrey is like living out his life, but he discovers in the end that they're filming his life. So I sort of felt like I was living through some drama, but it was my life and it was reality. And honestly, I was looking back, I was sort of mad at myself because I didn't cry when I first heard the news, and dealing with that information, before my mother found out. I didn't cry initially. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not crying? Obviously later on, I came to terms with the information, but initially I didn't, because I was like, I guess you could say I was in disbelief. I was like, no, it's not real. It's not real. It's this is a prank. My brother is just on some extended vacation.
Right. What has been the thing that has held you together through all of this, through your 20s, and just through the different challenges that you face through your life up till now?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that I had anything specific, like a word. I wouldn't say I had a word. I would say, how people say, through adversity, they grow up to be stronger.
Right.
That's definitely true in me. Through all the adversity, I definitely say I have to build more confidence in myself. But all of my friends, everyone around me, they're like, you're so strong. you're so strong. And obviously I have to give myself more credit that I'm here today and I'm able to speak with you. I would say what kept me going were my friends. I've mentioned it earlier, but I have to say it again, that my friends are my lifeline, 100%. They're the ones that they were there for me, as well as Jake, and kept me going and you know, got me to where I am right now in my life. But I'd also have to say that I didn't think I wanted the same ending as my brother did, because one, I don't like pain. So I wouldn't want, I'm sure there are painless ways, but I don't like pain at all. So I also couldn't fathom leaving what I would leave behind. So obviously, I guess thinking about that, I decided to turn the other direction, and that was to live, to tell the story, to live, and you know, I had to live for my brother.
Ooh.
So I guess you could say my brother kept me going, my friends kept me going, Jake, my boyfriend, kept me going. I guess it's to sum it all up. I guess that's what I would say about that.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've gone through some things in my life. I mean, nothing compared to your situation, but I just feel like when you are met with adversity and challenges, pretty much what you just said, you just fight through it. You just go through it, because I just feel like I'm living for somebody else, you know. And so whatever I'm going through, like you also mentioned, it's temporary, you know. So the pain or the challenge that we face is only temporary. So we just continue to live, and we continue to fight, and we continue to be, you know, just a positive voice and make positive impacts in people's lives. And we just keep moving, you know. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. And
I think something that a lot of us forget is that each one of us is human. You know, we feel so much, we hate so strongly, we love and like so strongly as well. I think, you know, we're not robots. Like, we're I don't know if that's the correct word, that we're infallible, but we're, you know, we adapt, we change, you know, we're just human. But I think a lot of it is also how we choose as a human. Like, I feel like in any situation, any point in our lives, not that there's two choices, but usually there's two choices. So in my case, I chose, you know, to live.
Right. Do you think that you'll ever, I mean, since you are a writer, do you think that you'll ever like write a book about your life story or about your brother in the future? Or
I don't think it would be my story. I think it'd be my brother's story from my point of view, obviously.
Right.
But no, actually, I've been working on a memoir for a while.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
A while ago, I sort of wanted it again as like, you know, sort of like a legacy. You know, I want people to be aware and to tell a story. But there's a lot of like more specific details to the story that is like hard for me to truly tell people about and for people to know.
Right.
So it sort of ties into, you know, my culture of like saving face and like, you know, how truthful do you want to be? But I think it's important to the story. So, but it's one of my goals. I would love to, you know, publish a memoir in this lifetime. But yeah. I've been working on it for a while, and that's why I'm also able to tell you the story, because it's current in my mind, because I've been working on it for the last like year or two. So the story is just because my memory is good, but my memory is also not good in certain aspects. So that's why I'm able to recall back some specific moments to the story. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. One last question before I let you go. Because I know that, you know, your parents were hard on your brother because he was the boy, the man of the family. But how was their relationship with you, and what were some of your expectations, and were their expectations stressful for you to complete at times?
I think so. So, in my culture, I'm Asian, so I grew up with, you know, the Asian culture of, you know, the fact that I'm a female. It's like, well, you know, you have to be married at a certain point. You have to have children at a certain point. You have to have a family and take care of the family in the house. That's, you know, in certain aspects. And I think, but it's interesting in the fact that I bring that up, because it's like in our culture, but it's like it's school. Growing up. Focus on school. School's so important. You have to get, you know, good grades and graduate top of your class and go to a good college. Mm-hmm. But then as soon as you graduate college, it's like, okay, when are you gonna get married? I'm like, when did I have time to date? You just told me to focus on school. So I think it's interesting that happens that way, because I'm like, realistically, it can't happen as you want it. But yeah, there's that certain aspect and certain expectations that you have to be strong enough to overcome adversity as a woman, whether that be, you know, bad people around you, or you face difficult situations, you know, throughout life. But then, you know, once you find a partner and you get married, sort of, then the man has to take over and take care of you. It's a certain role that's placed upon. But obviously, I think in this day and age, that's traditional in the sense of the word, and it's, you know, different from generation to generation nowadays. Now it's, you know, a woman can have a career, a woman can have a baby without a man, you know, they don't have to get married, you know, things like that. I definitely faced that initially when I chose to study English in college and not math or science, you know, or become a lawyer or a doctor or a scientist. I didn't, you know, I didn't seek out the typical roles that are expected in that sense of the word. Funnily enough, I initially wanted to go to art school. And obviously they're like, what are you going to do with that? You're going to be like broke. And then my dad and my brother would used to joke and be like, oh, you know how to talk. You're very persuasive sometimes. You should be a lawyer. And I'm like, what? So it's interestingly, I did apply to some colleges as English pre-law, which is so weird.
Yo.
But that was before, you know, I really came into who I am and how I'm able to speak to you until like junior year of college. So it was just interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Obviously I dropped the pre-law part and it was just English.
Right.
But also, I'm grateful for communications because I'm able to like talk to people better, come out of my shy shell in that way. I'm sorry, what was the question? I'm just talking about myself here.
Man, I even forgot the question.
My apologies.
No, your parents' expectations of you. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so my parents' expectations of me. I think when my brother passed away, that sort of fell on me a bit heavier. And I
Right.
think, they wanted to talk more with me. And I think that's a bit difficult for me because that's not how we grew up,
Right. Right.
So I'm still trying to be better at that. But in a way, also, my mother initiated the divorce with my father. And so she sort of had to, resort back to figuring out life by herself because my dad handled a lot of the details for her. So in a way, I became the parent for her,
Okay.
which was the interesting dynamic. Because even now, she'll like say certain things how a mom would say to their daughter as like advice or suggestions on that. But for me, I'm just like, but can I really listen because I've just told you this, and this, and how to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic. But I've had a tough relationship with my mother, even till now, and I'm sort of just trying to navigate that. But it certainly helps that I live on my own and I can sort of dictate the sort of distance and what kind of relationship I have with her. With my father, after the divorce, we actually became much closer. I think just because, him and I were the first people to hear about my brother, that also in a way of him be like, oh, well, I've lost my son. Now I need to be close with my daughter. I need to talk to her. I need to speak with her. So we sort of became closer. Like he was able to tell me all of his feelings and emotions that were happening with my brother and the divorce and how he was feeling. And, I was able to talk with him a little bit. I still have trouble being fully, open with him and just talking. But we certainly got closer, and that was I would say that was one of the good things that came out of everything that happened, because he was a workaholic, and all throughout growing up, I didn't really have much of a relationship with him. Like, we would, laugh and joke, but I didn't see him much just because he was always working. So I think that's grateful that we had a closer relationship through that. So,
for sure. It's sad that it takes a passing of a family member to draw people together or closer.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's sad, but I'm glad that you have a relationship, with your father, and you're working on having a progressive relationship with your mom, and
Yeah,
that's good.
They still have sort of the traditional ideals from their generation that they still put upon me and until this very day. So I'm not about that. So I think it's interesting to sort of navigate that. Like, honestly, I get pulled between two sides of myself. It's like, we grew up to say that, you have to do everything for your parents. You have to listen to your parents. They give you good advice. But there's also a part of me that feels like I know deep down I know what they say to me and their advice for me comes from tough love. I know, they come from a good place. But for me, I think also throughout all of this is like I'm trying to live a life that's genuine to who I am. And that's obviously changed over the years, but because, I've grown up and we don't live in the same household, they don't quite see that
Got it. Wow. I need a moment.
It's certainly a lot.
That's a lot.
I just appreciate you listening and anyone out there who listens to my story. And I could talk to you about anything for hours. This is great. But
No, for sure.
Yeah.
No, Diana, thank you again for coming on and sharing your story, and definitely gonna have you back on again.
Yeah, I hope so. I got more to say.
But to the people that are listening to us, just be kind, love your family, love your friends, and just remember the golden rule. Treat others the way that you want to be treated, and
It doesn't hurt to be nice. Also, it doesn't take much out of your day-to-day to be nice.
For sure.
One small tiny gesture can mean the world to someone else. Like opening the door, or just saying, "Hi, how are you?" or like, "Good morning."
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt.
Facts. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a great episode with my good friend Diana. Make sure that, are you on Instagram or the socials or anything?
My Instagram is private.
Okay.
But if people reach out to you and they want to get in touch with me,
Okay.
totally open.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you heard her.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is another episode of the Barr Friends Podcast featuring my near and dear friend Diana. And thank you so much. And
Thank you.
see you next episode.
Bye.
Bye.